Hi everyone, I'm Brogan Garrett-Smith, host of Getting There the podcast. And today I'm going to talk to you about storytelling. And for me, storytelling is really personal to each brand. And when I was starting off the podcast, for me, it was really important to just be myself. And I know this sounds like something that's so simple, but it really isn't. You know, quite often we get caught up in telling other people's story or their journey. And in truth, the only real way to storytell is to tell your life, the things that have happened to you. And quite often on social media, we can see if someone's trying to sell us something or tell us something. But the beautiful thing about storytelling is just sharing your story, the things you've learned with no judgment and no bias. And straight away, you will align yourself to being a completely authentic brand. Helen Marie.
Oh, hang on.
Oh, don't be silly. I've been so excited to have you here today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here and to make it finally work. I feel like it was stop-start, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that's life. I just knew it was going to happen.
Sorry.
I've been fangirling you for ages. Me and my sister actually share your posts, and you're getting so much traction online from all this gentle reminders. Yeah.
I think there's a need for it, isn't there?
I feel massively. We're going to get into that. Yeah. I feel that there's been a little bit of mystery around your identity as well. Like, I don't feel like I don't feel that I know you, but obviously I know you a bit now, and I know a little bit of your experience that brought you into therapy. But for our listeners who are listening, could you please give us a little bit of an introduction?
Of course. So, Helen Marie, and I built an Instagram community, which, they're just such a beautiful community, supportive and gentle, like more gentle souls, you know, and just like wanting this slower understanding and also deep connection and understanding of self. But in answer to your, how did I get where I was, I had my own personal experience, someone very close to me, of having some struggles with mental illness. Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So really hard. And I think I was saying to you before we press record that sadly it's not my story to share. So I have to use some confidentiality there. Obviously my story is that I witnessed it. And it was very painful to witness. And you've been talking about how you're a fixer, desperately want to help. And I watched this community of people around this person I was very close to really support and work towards that end goal of, I don't use the word fix because I think it infers that we're broken, but support and hold this person. And it was so beautiful to witness in practice. And although I was on a career break because I was looking after my children at the time, and I didn't know where I was going to go, like what I wanted to do next. I knew I didn't want to go back into what I used to do, working for the Health Protection Agency. I was saying to you, I worked in meningitis, infectious disease specialist. But I knew I wanted to do something else. I didn't just want to stop.
Yeah.
And it just came to me one day, this is what I need to do. I need to go and take my experience of caring for someone with mental health problems and give back what those others did so wonderfully for them. And then the journey started, 5 years ago.
And share all of your insights of what you'd learned.
And just bringing that level of compassion and empathy of, I know. And we were touching on before we pressed record about our own mental health journeys. And, you know, I really struggled with my own mental health through that time of supporting someone else with mental health. But not thinking that my mental health issues mattered as much. But with that became really severe panic attacks, and that was a really frightening place to be.
Yeah.
But training.
Especially when you feel so helpless. And for me, when I entered therapy, so I think it was 6 years ago, it was very, very weighted, Helen. Like everyone be like, you know, especially in my family, they're quite traditional, you know, chin up, get on with it. And they'd be like, always knew something was wrong with you, you know, and it was that kind of stigma. And for me, I felt that there was a lot of shame. It's like, well, I'm broken. Like, why do you need to see a therapist? You know, growing up from this traditional East End family, where I was never really heard or understood. We were a product, okay, things had happened to us, but that's gone now. We use the phrase, let sleeping dogs lie, that's it. So for me, when I entered the therapy world, it was just like opening a door that was so scary, because I felt that, oh my God, I'm owning up to this thing that I'm broken or I need help. And now I feel like it's shifting a little bit, and that's what really resonated with me through your post. It's like, it hasn't got to be so weighted, and it hasn't got to be an outcome and a regimen to follow. It just has to be like, this is okay. This is happening.
This is human.
Yeah, and it's okay to feel like this. Because what we all do, and especially, I can only speak from my experience, but I know it happens a lot, is that we go, oh, don't worry about that. It'll be all right. No, don't, because that's our need of fixing it. When really it's like, do you know what? I'm so sorry that is happening to you. Yeah. And I'm here, and it's okay to warrant your feelings, because my whole life, I feel like emotions, I'm trying to think about a way how to word this. Like, we shouldn't have uncomfortable emotions. We have this preconception that life is not meant to be uncomfortable. Like, you shouldn't feel like that. But my biggest aha moment when I was like, oh my God, this is actually meant to be uncomfortable. And when we're going through something, I always say, oh, do you know what, babe? I was like, you're going to die. Someone you love's going to get really ill, and stuff's going to really suck, and travesty's going to happen. And everyone's like, I'm like, but that was born to happen. Yes. And this is another reason I just felt like all of your posts resonated. It was coming back to, that's okay. Yes. And this is going to happen. Yeah. So can you tell me about how, I'm obsessed with it here, the book.
Oh, bless you.
The book came to be.
Oh, okay. Because, well, two things really. I can't get enough words on an Instagram caption. There's clearly a want. My Instagram community sort of grew before my eyes, and that was the answer to me. They were telling me they wanted more of this. But I was really fortunate, and I never take it for granted, that Penguin reached out to me and said, would you like to write a book? And I was like, oh, I don't know, do I? I was like, okay, I do. So, and there it was born, really. And I'm so pleased I did. And I remember thinking, I'm not sure this is true.
Someone's punking me.
Someone's just... And then it was beautiful. And my wonderful team of editors and agent. And it was just, I have to say, a really enjoyable experience.
Because what I've really enjoyed about the book is that I feel it's really accessible for people who aren't able to enter the therapy space.
Thank you for saying that. Because therapy, sadly, isn't accessible to all, which is another reason I wrote this book. I'm not saying this replaces therapy in any shape or form, and you'll see the whole way through I catch myself the whole time, with deeper issues. This could be better explored with a professional. But what I wanted to do was hold people throughout all of those chapters. What I feel sometimes social media lacks is someone could be reading an incredibly triggering post at 2:00 in the morning on their own with no one to hold them in safety. And what I've done throughout the book is hopefully hold you in each chapter so you feel safe.
Yeah.
And, you were saying about that ability to hold people. It's so important.
Well, I think we forget as well. We were raised in communities, and I feel that in current society, it's like every man for themselves. This is what we should do. And, choosing you comes with an awful lot of shame. Like even the aeroplane mask for ages, Helen, I couldn't get my head around it. What do you mean I've got to put my mask on first? And yeah, especially as a mother, it's like, what do you mean I should put my needs first?
I know, the lioness in us.
Yeah.
Like, the child. But we're nothing to anyone until we've met our own needs too. So really, I feel that the book should come with a choose you too.
Yeah.
It's not there's an element of selfishness, but about not seeing selfishness in a negative way. I was actually chatting to someone on my podcast about this the other day, and they're coming on the show soon. But it's about having self-agency. It's about having self-responsibility. It's about giving yourself enough so that you can be enough for others. It does make sense.
Yeah, it does.
When I've not come from a full, grounded, regulated state, I'm no good for anyone around me. might not be present. I'm a bit irritable. I'm tired. I'm hungry. You know, let's go down to the basic needs.
Well, this is what I wanted to talk to you about, because a lot of the, I'm so interested in self-development, like I said, therapy, everything, I'm game for it. And the word I keep hearing come up is nervous system.
Oh, okay.
And, and what I loved about your book is, and I've got it here, is like you've got that 360 approach. It isn't we have to fix this, but also remembering that our brain and our bodies and our spirit are all one, and to look after them all. But for people that are listening and they're like, what do you mean my nervous system? What do you mean I have to regulate it? And they're novices to this kind of self-development talk. How would you explain that? What is our nervous system made up of? And then I have a question, which we'll come back to, is, are our nervous systems developed when we're children? Mm-hmm. So there's a few bits there that I want to talk to you about.
Okay. Oh, the nervous system work is a real area of passion for me, and I've done a lot of work on it because it makes a lot of sense to me.
It does,
and I think all therapists have areas of expertise or areas they really love, and the nervous system one, it makes sense to me. It's about understanding that our brain and our body are connected. So you may have heard of the vagus nerve.
Yep. Down the back of the neck?
Yes.
I cold shower it, yeah.
Yeah, so there's lots of things around the vagus nerve on social media at the moment, but the simplest way to explain it is it's the longest neural pathway in our body, and it connects our brain to all of the systems in our body. So
that regulate us.
It literally travels down. The diagram of it is
we'll
brilliant.
Get it up.
Look it
James
up online.
Get it up.
It's brilliant. If you look at it online, it's great. And it literally connects. And it's so intricate. And it comes round onto the face, and it goes down, and it connects to your...
It's like a plug-in cord.
It is. It's absolutely amazing. And it connects to your respiratory system, which is why... we'll come to that in a second. Respiratory system, your gut system, your liver, all of your organs, your hormonal system. And 80% of the flow of information along this vagus nerve is from the body up to the mind. Okay. And only 20% from the mind back down to the body.
Isn't that fascinating?
It is. So when your gut feels anxious, so much in it, our gut, our tummy starts to play around with anxiety, shoots messages up to the brain, specifically to the amygdala in your brain, which releases cortisol, anxious stress hormone. And then that floods your body, and then your body feels stressed. Right. So, but the message comes from your body first, which is why we always work very closely with what sensations are you noticing. Like if you can just quieten down the mind, what's your body doing? You may be fiddling. You may be tapping your foot.
There's so much ancient wisdom in our body that we override.
All the time, but all of our emotions are coming from our body. It's what we experience in the body. The emotions is like an umbrella term for this huge amount of data coming up from our nervous system.
So I'm a firm believer that we all live with our own internal GPS, that we are actually being guided and pulled to all of the things that are meant for us, or that your soul's yearning to be expressed. And I know it can sound a bit woo-woo to people, but I believe that that's already innate within me. And what happens is, the most times I'll feel those overwhelms where I'm not listening to hear and to hear. And my biggest thing, Helen, is in this whole journey of self-development, I can honestly, with my hand on my heart, probably only say within the last year I've had the confidence to say, that feels right for me. Whereas at the beginning of this, I don't know if you've ever done this, you've probably not, but I'd go and listen to every podcast, I'd get all these self-development books, I'd go on every retreat, I'd spend thousands of pounds because I believed everybody else knew more about me than what I knew. And I'd listen to a podcast and I'd be like, cracked it. Got to get up at 6, got to ground, got to smoke a kilo of sage. Yeah. I'm going to meditate, journal, infrared. I'm going to have to get up basically at the crack of dawn, and I'm going to do all of this stuff that everyone tells me works, and then I'm going to be okay. And that was the beauty of your book. It wasn't giving instruction. It was bringing you home to yourselves. Yes. And in this environment, we all think everyone knows so much better than us, Helen. I need to get this PT, and I need to go vegan, and then I need to be keto. I'm the world's worst. I've tried everything. And what I came to realise as well is that no two lives are meant to look the same. And we get so caught up in what other people's measure of success is that we don't follow
Hugely.
the GPS that lives within us.
But when you talk about it as a GPS, I talk about it as a lived experience. Every single one of us has a different lived experience. So in which case we will think differently, we'll behave differently. Certain things will light us up more than other things. I remember when I was training and the psychotherapist taking the session said, I want you all, there's 25 of us in the room, I want all of you to write down, what does airport mean to you? Ridiculous, going on holiday, it's great. And then she got all of us to read out what we'd written. There were 25 different answers. Not one of us had the same experience about an airport and what it meant to us, which means we all hold different stories and we give different meaning to any experience we are in.
That's so beautiful.
And I've never forgotten
My
it.
thing is as well, I believe each and every one of us are so extraordinary, Helen. Like from the hairs in your head to the way the maps on your eyes
Amazing.
to your fingerprint to everything. There's never been you before. There will never be you again. You are so intricate. You are so beautiful. You are so extraordinary.
I know.
But you are so ordinary in the same breath. Like you have the same capacity to do, to believe, to experience joy. And quite often than not, we put these people on a pedestal of like, oh, they deserve that. And this hierarchy of people that, for me, I used to think like these people, that hierarchy that are the light, it was saved for people like Mahatma Gandhi or at the minute Jay Shetty, they're so full of light. But exactly what you just said, I'm a firm believer that the light lives within each and every one of us. And the way you're going to light up the world, Helen, is going to be totally different to the way I'm going to light up the world. I mean, two chalk and cheese downstairs in Gales, I think there's no way they know each other, but it doesn't bring any less light to the world. No. And in the beauty of your book, I felt that my whole life, when I was looking into this work, I was giving instruction or advice. And the beauty of your work, and I think why it's becoming so important in what we're living in, it's like, no. You already know, and it's okay to feel like that. But just going back to the question on the nervous system, and just from a point of view from people who are listening, am I right in saying, I don't know if I am right, by the way, that our subconscious is formed at a really infant years? If we take it back from the beginning, when are our patterns and everything formed?
Okay, so I'm not a neuroscientist.
No, but
what I can tell you is I work very closely with attachment theory, which was developed by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth back in the late 50s, I think, yes. And the neurobiology of attachment, in terms of how our brain has developed, is dominated predominantly through stages of, all the way from 0 through to 7.
Yes.
Huge shaping of the way that our brain is developed then. And then there's another, so it's how we've connected and attached to our caregivers, really shapes how we then go out in the world and see the world. It's how we learn to separate from our caregivers without anxiety. So we look at those that have insecure attachment and secure attachment. And I think it's only 40 or 50% that have secure attachment. So that's a big chunk of people with insecure attachment.
Yeah, sign me up for that one. Yeah.
There's a spectrum. But those 7 years, it's heavily nuanced. So there's other experiences in life that can cause attachment issues. But those 7 years really shape, and the way that we've adapted, and we call them creative adjustments, the way we've adapted in childhood. We predominantly want to survive in those 7 years. We're learning how to survive. It's where our people-pleasing traits may come in. It will be where our lack of self-worth, lack of self-belief, self-doubt story comes. It will come from I'm not important, will come from those very early years. And the way we develop those, what then become personality traits, we take them into adulthood, we're still believing.
The narrative that's
it's
been
there. The 20s,
created.
30s, 40s, we still think, I'm not important. I need to make everyone else feel the best they can feel, and I don't matter. They're stemming from there. There's another big part in adolescence with identity, huge part there as well. Relationships really affect that. Can't even remember what your original question was.
Yeah, it was the nervous system and the subconscious being formed, because the more work that I do is everyone's like 0 to 7.
Oh, okay.
And
so
I've got a
familiar
4-year-old,
with it.
so I'm like, I've got 1,000 days not to fuck him up. Yeah.
Okay,
and then
all
I'm in the
right.
home straight.
But remember, as Winnicott said, you can be good enough parent.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't do my training until my children were 16, 18 and 20. So I wished I'd done it before, but they're great kids. You know, the fundamentals of there of being a good enough parent. But 0 to 7, crucial.
Yeah, and I remember when I went on the Hoffman process, they were talking about children, and I was like, I'm not going to mess him up. And she was like, everyone is coming out of this world with scaling levels of trauma, you know? And I was like, that's so true. And there are some things that are outside of, you know, of what you can control. And I remember when I was getting rid of his dummy, Helen, and obviously I was like so chaotic. I left his dad and we were living with my sisters and all of this stuff. And then I was like, he needs to get rid of this dummy, right? Because he's got a speech impediment. And I was like, I'm so scared of messing him up. And every time I'd like sleep on the floor next to him, scared to upset him, like take his dummy out with my little finger and be like, please. And I think with this awareness of what is happening to children, and you can't blame generations above us or anything. No one had this awareness.
No.
And, you know, I'm a firm believer in generational trauma as well. You know, our ancestors were going to wars and things like that. But now our basic needs are settling. There's this conversation around, okay, well, how do you feel, and the emotions, and how do we want to raise children as well? And I just feel like it's so important. And in your book you talk about healing and everyone deserves to heal. And I know you said earlier that you don't like the term broken because that infers fixed, because you don't like the term fixed.
Did I say it in the book?
No, you didn't. You don't like the term fixed, but because that infers something was broken. But in terms of healing, I think wound. Yeah.
Yes.
So we are all given these wounds, I'm guessing, in adolescent and childhood years. Do we ever really fix them, or do we learn to live with them, in your experience?
Okay. So I think I just want to jump back a bit, if I can, about your personal experience of being a mum, because it's so lovely. And I look at you and you've got this beautiful, radiant energy. And I just want to say to you that if you're even asking yourself the question and you're bringing all of that beautiful self-awareness in, you're doing a really good job.
Yeah.
You know, you're asking yourself the questions, you're trying your best today.
Yeah.
And tomorrow that might look different.
Yeah.
When you get to know more, you'll do different.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful term in therapy called rupture and repair.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of it.
So funny. I was listening to another podcast in the other moment with the brain woman. No, not the brain woman. The one that got separated from her partner, left her, and she was saying rupture and repair, but only to a small degree.
Okay.
Your one? I'm sure it was. But it's saying the body needs rupture and repair,
It
but
does.
but not as, doesn't need it to a certain
Nicole
degree.
Vignola
Yes, that was it.
in the neuroscience, the brain
That's
and heart rate.
it, yes.
Yes. Yes, we need rupture and repair to learn. But from a perspective of understanding, we will always have ruptures in our relationships. And I'm not just talking romantic relationships, the parental relationship, up and down, our friendships. When ruptures happen, what's the growth and the healing is how you actually do the repair work. Now, I remember hearing that for the first time and just thinking, if I do the repair work, I don't want to say undoes the rupture, but it helps heal the rupture. It's when someone won't take any accountability for that rupture, has no interest in healing that wound of the other person that they've inflicted it on, that it's really hard to work with that wound. Really hard.
I think comes with that is an awareness
Hugely.
of the sounds like I'm getting very woo-woo here.
No,
But
I
an
love it. I love
awareness
woo-woo.
an awareness of the wound.
Am I really bringing this out with you
Yeah,
today?
exactly. Awareness of the wound and a responsibility to fix it. You know, I think quite often we think we're at the mercy of the environment and things that shape us. You know, like people live in a victim mindset. Oh, this happened, or he left me, and there are some really awful, tragic things that have happened. And I'm not bypassing anyone's grief or trauma because I've had my own. But it's almost, I am a firm believer that also I think it comes into play is when I came to surrender at something that was higher than me, so that for people that can be God or the universe or whatever, some things are so simply outside of our control that there has to be a guiding force behind it. So when awful things have happened to me in my life, I'm like, okay, this is being shown to me for something.
You're taking the lesson, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're taking the deeper level of understanding.
And with that comes that you won't always understand everything.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
We can't, can we? But I think there's something about being really transparent. So you were really transparent then. I don't understand everything. I'm trying to understand this, or I'm searching for this, or I feel this. There's something very endearing about when someone says, I'm feeling really uncomfortable with this, and my nervous system is saying this, and I don't like this. And what a beautiful way to be so honest, as opposed to masking and pretending. Wouldn't it be wonderful as a culture if we could just allow people the space to say, that doesn't feel like that to me, or that doesn't resonate for me, or doesn't work for me, or I feel really uncomfortable with this. But we all sort of get into this pattern of we shut up, we do what we should be doing or think we should be doing, and we become the unreal versions of ourselves.
And I think you're kind of stepping into like the boundary talk now, and that's part of what you're saying in your book about choosing you. The fact that something doesn't feel right warrants a no.
Yes, and understanding that. And I want to come back to what you said about where you don't understand and you think there's a higher. Through hours and hours of therapy and understanding, and I grew up with a real spiritually strong kind of aunts and nan,
amazing.
And I remember their conversations and loving it, and they had this, I knew they had this kind of feeling that there was something else out there. But I've come to learn that I do understand that we might not understand everything, but I do understand myself at a better level. And that when I give the power back to myself, I'm in a more confident position with understanding the world from my perspective. So it's about bringing it back to giving yourself the power and not giving the universe the power as such. Now, that might go against what a lot of other people think, but I do think the power lies back in your own self and your own being. And self-agency. Yeah,
and it gives you the ability to change or shape your environment. And I think if you don't, and this is really easy to say because it's coming from a person that's really never believed in themselves. Okay. But if you don't believe in yourself, then it's going to be extremely difficult to go out there and do whatever it is you want to do, you know. Quite often we wait for the applaud, you know. You imagine you're in a theatre, you want everyone to stand up and applaud you. But the reality is, Helen, that those people are going to go home. And if you don't clap for yourself when you're tucked into bed, no one else's applause matter. No. And I came to realise that, you know, the biggest way of indicating the trajectory of my life wasn't all of my work stuff, but it would be how I spoke to myself internally. It didn't matter what I'd achieved or what I'd done or how many kids I'd had. But if I can't talk to myself as kindly as I would to a friend, then I'm not going to get anywhere.
And how is that now?
Well, it's been a real shift because I would get in these, like these states of like, oh, this isn't good enough, or this is, and I'm going to be totally honest here, you know, I wouldn't look at myself in the mirror, Helen. Like, I would walk past and close mirrors because I'd be like, you're not worthy, you're not good enough, and I feel like I should be in a position and use my platform to say that to people. You know, people would think, how on earth could she say that?
I love you saying
yeah,
that.
but
It's
I
reality.
would,
Reality.
and I would go out and drink on weekends. And like we say about what the body's saying, no, I would swell, I'd become inflamed. Like Mondays, I'd be like, I can't leave the house because I'm so ugly, I'm so worthless, I can't look into the mirror. And I thought, that's a day, you know, that's a day of my life that I've lost, let alone the weekend because I was using it as an escapism. But I think, you know, it's easier said than done when you have children, but shifting, right? How do we teach our children? Well, we don't. We show them. So if I see the way I talk to myself, or I look after myself, and you know, my son watches every day, Mum, you going for a run? Mummy, you doing this? You know, and we talk about, and not in a dangerous way, healthy and unhealthy. You know, he can have ice cream on the weekends, but we're good in the week because we're going to get our muscles.
And the mirroring behaviour.
And he'll go to me, oh, it's hilarious. He goes, look at my muscles, because he can't say muscles. Look at my muscles, Mummy. And he does his hair. He puts gel in. I'm going to show you a picture, and he goes, Mummy, I'm so smart. I go, yeah, you are smart. Yeah. And I just felt that for so long that nobody else must talk to themselves the way they spoke to me, the way I spoke to myself. Like, I wouldn't speak to my worst enemy, Helen, the way I used to speak to myself. And when we're going back to it, but obviously it's prevalent in our conversation, going back to the Hoffman, we had to draw out our inner critic, you know. What did it say? What did it look like? And I thought, you know, I'm the only one here that's going to spit out a dragon that's like firing all of this stuff. But we all have this inner critic and this lodger that lives, you know, in our head rent free. But what I came to try and learn to do was dissociate. So I had it actually the weekend. I had a really social diary. I don't really drink, Helen. I don't really go out. You know, I'm committed to my son and the work that I want to do. And I had like 3 days back to back of like social events, overeating. That's always shown up for me. Like, I was like 11 stone when I was 11. And I just think it goes up every year because I was like, that food was my outlet. So it was really triggering all of these things. And on the Monday, I was like, I feel bloated. I feel tired. I'm puffy. And I was like, no, I'm going to go out and go for a walk. And I'm going to ice roll on my face, and I'm taking my son to the park, and I'm going to understand that in 4 days' time I'll be less puffy and I'll get a couple of good nights' sleep. Whereas before it'd be like, you're not enough, you should sit in, you know, take today off or whatever. And I came to realise that the voice isn't me.
I'm really glad you said that.
Because a lot of people get scared.
I know.
You know, we're talking about, and in your book you talk about being your authentic self. And some people are like, what does that mean? I know. Because what's the voice and what's this? And I'd be curious to know your indication. But for me, my authentic self is the whisper, and it's the quiet, and it's the knowing. It's not the, you're so fat, you're so ugly, you're so puffy, you can't fucking go out the house. It's, you're enough. Keep going. There is worse going on in the world. And for people, when I started my self-development journey, I felt like, what do you mean your authentic self, you bunch of tree huggers? I am me. I am one. You know, I thought it was just say, the word was reserved for a bunch of vegans around a tree. I know. You're like, what do you mean? What's me and what's somebody else?
I know.
And that's the way I distinguish it. It's the knowing of, you know, I've got a couple of work projects coming up, and I was like, yeah. You mean you've met me? I'm going to do that. We're going to do this. And I've not totally overestimated. I've just gone and set a super high bar of where I want to be. And I'm, yeah, we'll do that. And then 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, you can't do that. What, you're going to stand in a room in front of 1,000 people and tell them that you call yourself, you know, a fat, puffy pufferfish? Yeah. Well, yes, I did sign up to doing that last week. But that comes up, doesn't it?
It does.
But it was the knowing and the power of like, yeah, I'll do that. And I was like, are you sure? Yeah, I'll do that.
That inner critic creeps in, doesn't it?
But from your perspective, in a professional therapist way, rather than calling the everyone a tree-hugging vegan, how would you, when people come to you and we talk about our authentic self, how do you establish what is which to your clients?
Sorry, what is which?
You're like the voice.
The voice.
And
okay.
your authentic self.
Okay, so I would say the moment, right, so our inner critic, if we actually look at our inner critic, we're not born with an inner critic. So the inner critic has been data and words we've collated from other people. So we often say in therapy, whose voice are you really hearing when that inner critic comes in? It's not yours. It would have been words and voice.
Always my dad. Sorry, Dad, if you're listening this week. No, but I go, oh my God, that is him.
Understanding
because I've been, and I've been in therapy long enough to know that that's his
story.
Yeah.
And we try very hard not to blame. Obviously, in some cases, we're talking severe trauma. You've got a piece of head.
Yeah, it's annoying, isn't it?
Just thought I'd share that.
There we go. Hopefully we're just seeing your bit.
You would
but
tell
I
me,
want to make
you,
it. Yeah, I would
had a piece?
100%. I'd let you sit there with a quiff. But I want to make this episode accessible to people that I think you hear so many voices in your head now because we have our inner critic, our authentic self, and then we're going to come to it. I feel like you have this social media voice.
Oh, yeah, I think, yes. And so that's really interesting because what you have to remember is not to group everyone in the same category.
Okay.
Some people will be themselves wherever they go.
Okay.
So
is that a lot of people?
Well, I would like to think I am me on social media as I am as a mom.
Oh, no, but you hear the voices of social media. Oh, is what I meant.
In what way?
So I feel that we have our authentic self, then we have the inner critic, and then I hear that. And the inner critic's probably made up of the noise of social media.
Just quite.
How have they done that?
Turn it down. Literally, just turn that dial down. Just show up how you want to show up. Don't worry about what anyone says or feeds back. I'm saying I can take criticism, but what I mean is just show up with your truth. You can't go wrong there. Show up. And I remember when I was nervous about my book coming out, and I have a very close friend who's a psychotherapist, and he's actually doing his doctorate in psychotherapy. And I said, I'm so nervous about how it's going to be received. And he literally said in just a few short words, but you've said the words that you wanted to share. I was like, that's it, I'm done, I'm healed, that's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
That's fine. I'm not sharing anyone else's words. I'm sharing what I want to say.
Yeah.
And there's something in that.
Well, I think, sorry, Daddy, someone just stopped swearing. You can't mess up being you, right? I can mess up trying to be someone else. And, I talk about it quite often. When I started the podcast, I was like, I'm going to be like Jay Shetty, I'm going to be like Stephen Bartlett. And, they're very formal and reserved. And in my live show with Mo, I turned up in my slippers because I was like, I'm going to fall over. I'm so anxious and nervous and excited as well. It's how you interpretate that I'm probably going to fall over a wire somewhere or trip over my microphone. So I'm just going to be me and wear my slippers. And I promise you, it was one of the most freeing moments of my life. And James actually was next door before I went on. Because I did this live show before I even had a podcast, right? It was crazy with Mo Gadat. I don't know.
Yeah. I was on his.
Oh,
podcast,
amazing.
Yeah.
Before I convinced him to do it before I even had a show. I don't know how that happened. So
before you had your podcast?
Yeah, he was my first person at a live event, and then I released the rest.
Brilliant. Love it.
So
self-belief.
Oh my God, I was like, Mo,
no inner critic that day.
Oh my, there was no inner critic until I turned up and my palms were sweating. And my sister, she's so lovely. She's a stylist though, Helen. She didn't think about camel cashmere and sweating, I'll get you some pictures. But again, that's me. So if I'm not sweating and being all of me in front of a large room of people, then that's what I was there to do. But James, who you've met, the lovely studio manager, I was had my cards and it was all going to go right. And he was like, just be you. So I'd be like, shift the music, do that.
And did you share that with Mo? Did you say, because actually there's something quite beautiful when someone says, feeling a bit anxious. I'm feeling a bit nervous. Because when we show up from being really human, it's very unusual for someone not to be endeared towards.
Well, I stood up and said, I want to explain when I'm in my slippers. Yeah. Because my mates that are in the room know that when I will wear heels, my gay friend refers to me as a nightclub bouncer because I have this shift with my heels. So I was like, I'm Paul, and I've been referred to as a bouncer in my heels. I didn't want to fall over. Guys, I'm sweating, I'm nervous. But, and so I'm going to wear my slippers, folks, yeah? And I'm wearing them for the rest of the day. And, before we went on, I was like, Mo, I'm so nervous. He's like, why?
I know.
And who could you want more in your corner that day than him?
I know.
Do you know what I mean?
He's a wonderful force.
And to take a chance on a young girl that had nothing.
Amazing.
Yeah, You just change the
Amazing.
trajectory of whatever was
You
next to
do.
come.
You do. But also by doing that, you just encourage all your following to, you're inspiring people in ways you don't realise to also show up, to show their vulnerability.
Yeah, and it's funny enough you said that, because, you know, we all like a glamorous picture of ourselves, and I thought, I don't want people to think that I look like this all of the time, because I don't. So I actually put, you know, when I said the Monday I didn't want to go out the house, I was like, this is me, I'm puffy, I'm swollen, and this is me 24 hours before, where I look all very glamorous. I'll have to send it to you.
I love that you
look
did
very
that.
glamorous, and I just want you all to know that no one looks like their pictures all of the time. And it must have been a full moon. The month before, I was having like a nervous breakdown, and I took a picture of myself, ugliest cry in the world, and I was like, I just want to share with you all. You know, I'm having some great press. I'm having this. I'd got my column. The podcast's going really well. But I'm sitting in my car and I'm shaking and I'm crying, because you feel that this is it. I've cracked it. I've got it. Life. And then you're like, fuck, I'm a beginner again.
It's like sand slipping through your fingers, isn't it? I've got it, and then it's like,
I've got it. I've
where
cracked
is
it. But the best bit is, Helen, you're never going to hold it. And it's always going to slip.
No.
And when you have that perspective of that, you're always a beginner.
Yeah.
And maybe I give myself the grace every month. I had to unfollow the moon woman, because every month I'd be like to my boyfriend, the full moon's coming, so, you know. And then I'd get upset.
Who's
and I'd
the
be like,
moon woman?
There's this moon woman called Kirsty Gallagher.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Kirsty, of her.
Yeah, and I would be like, oh God, 72 hours. Batten down the hatches. The moon's coming. And my boyfriend, he's like a massive conspiracist. He's like, you know, what's all this crap? Where does the old moon go then? I was like, I'm not worried about that. So now we unfollow the moon woman, Helen.
Okay.
But I follow my own internal GPS. I'll text him, there's a moon coming. He's like,
You can feel it.
Yeah, I can feel it. Honestly, I feel it. And I'm like half witch, half woman. And he's
You
like,
said that
oh my
earlier.
God. He's like, what are we in for this weekend? I was like, oh, I don't know, some recurring childhood trauma that I'm going to talk about all weekend. It's up to you. What do you want?
So your nervous system was picking up on something. Something was just beginning to come in where you were feeling a little bit less
Yes,
safe
I was like, I get
than
it.
usual.
And then it all falls. You know, I
Yes.
said to him,
Yeah.
you know, you'd never need to cheat on me, because I've got so many multiple personalities, especially all the moon scheduling as well. He never knows who he's going to get. But we have these really interesting conversations, and I never had a relationship like that in my life where I could just be me. I know that sounds so wild, but even in my family, Helen, growing up, it was always like, you're too much, you know, you're annoying, or you're loud. And in the romantic relationships I'd been in, I felt that I had to change parts of myself in order to be accepted. I had to be, and I would really dim my light. And for me, being in a relationship like this, and I sing this from the rooftops, is that it's so important to find people that feel like home. And that hasn't got to be your imminent family. It hasn't got someone that's the same age as you that lives in the same country, but just people who are so equally curious about life. They're heading the same way. Like, Helen, if we line up my friends, it's like a group of in-betweeners. You're never going to know what you'll get. But we've all shared this curiosity and excitement, and we can have these wacky conversations. And the ability to be yourself is so freeing. And I've never felt that I was enough, you know.
But you had so many messages coming in that were saying you're too much.
Yeah, always since I was a child.
So if you're learning that from when we're talking back about the neurobiology of attachment, you're holding on to that message. And then when you're in relationship with someone, you're constantly thinking, I'm too much, I need to quieten down. But then you're not showing up as your authentic self. So you're then not getting an authentic connection, which means you're then not getting the beautiful gift of two nervous systems coming together and co-regulating.
Yeah.
And we talk so often around relationships and nervous system, but they really matter. The right people really bring a regulation to our nervous system. We need to be in relationship with others. We're not meant to do life alone. We weren't created that way.
We were created in a community, and you forget that. Like, even when
we've
I
talked
became a
about
single mum,
everyone
was like to me, oh, shut up, so-and-so does it. Oh, so-and-so's baby. Everyone's a single mum. It's like,
But
I didn't have a parent that was like readily available.
Okay.
His grandparents live in Lincoln, and it's like I felt that I was there, and I should be really happy because I've got this really cute, young, unsleeping thing that's like everything I've craved.
Yeah.
But if you can't share that load, it's like you've got nowhere to go. And I was so hard on myself and so much shame. You know, all the things that I'd waited for, Helen, my whole life got taken away from me. And like we talk about our there, that was it. That was meant to be my there. And then all of a sudden I'm in my sister's loft, right? No, but it's life, yeah?
It is,
and it's the biggest
yeah,
redirection. And then
but-
I'm in my sister's loft and I'm like, well, what next? Because I just signed up to become a mum and a housewife and, you know, just really be the framework behind a successful businessman. And now I'm stuck with this thing that's like an alarm that doesn't sleep, that can sense me. I'm having panic attacks and you just don't know what's next. And I think, you know, talking about being your authentic self, that for me was a journey. And I think I speak for a lot of people that are like, we're so scared of rejection, aren't we? I can't just be me because they won't like me like that.
I know.
But the truth is, the right people will find you, and you only need.
I think you'll find the right people. I think I had a great guest this morning on my podcast, and she's a neuroscientist around manifestation, and fascinating.
What's her name? Can we know? Do we know?
Of course.
Yeah.
When does this one come out?
Ooh, July.
Oh,
Go, you can tell me after.
Yeah, I can tell you. But she's just fantastic, and she was talking about the fact that it's when we change and when we put in action, we actually attract different people or allow different people in because we've got a different energy about us. You know, it comes back to what we then say around what we think is acceptable in our life. When we have low self-worth, we almost accept anything.
My family used to say to me, like, what is that? I'd get a new boy. What is that? About the boyfriends. Like, what is this? You know, what are they? Like, you know, how are you bringing these home? And you know, when you look back, it's so funny. I was having this conversation with my friend who's been my best friend since I was like 14 in school. And I was like, you know, when I look back, well, I'm not surprised I picked up like the shit of the pit because I thought I was the shit of the pit.
Your self-worth was just so low.
Yeah, and now I'm like, no one treats me, I don't want to say like a queen, but at least they treat me with respect.
Yes.
And the things that I do, like, I'm a team player. Like, I'm going to be there for you no matter what, unless I'm mirrored in that.
Well,
I'm not going to have that.
You've got to have reciprocation, haven't you?
Whereas I would have given to everyone else and had nothing for myself. And I think a lot of that is, a lot of women probably feel like that, especially when you come in to becoming a parent and a wife. You feel that your duty, you know, you're like this octopus, goes to so many other people.
I know. Oh, I know.
And now you've got to work as well and make a school run and get back in time.
Well, how do you do it?
Well, I've got help. But it's like, but how do people do it?
But well done for asking for help. And I don't mean that in a
No.
patronising
I mean,
way.
that was a real shameful thing for me. I put my head in. I was like so embarrassed. Everyone was like, they're a single mum. Yeah, who's probably got their mother around the corner or their father around the corner. I said, I've had to get a babysitter, Helen, just for me to go to the gym, to go for an hour and back.
And that self-care.
Yeah, and if I was with a partner or a sister that lived nearby, you could go have the baby for an hour. Yeah. Like, those outlets are so important, and that's what you were talking about in the book. It's like having those outlets that are healthy, you know, in terms of like exercise. You were saying hygiene, drink water. You forget how important the physical outlet is as well.
Caring for your body. We often, a thing I use in my somatic practice with the body is get my clients, when they're so in their head, is to get them to just cup their hands and just, not in a woo-woo way.
No, we like woo-woo, come on. You're on the right podcast here for woo-woo.
I've got so many woo-woo tips. But it's to cup your hands and literally tap down your body. And you all the way down. And literally start to take form. I am a person. We get so lost in our head that we lose that connection to our body. And it just brings us back online in a funny way. To actually, I'll talk about coming back online in a minute, but it brings us back into connection with our body where we matter too. And whenever I do that in session with someone, I see them relax. They come out of their head and they're back in connection with themselves. And it's like, hang on, what are my needs? Let's turn this off for a bit. What does my body need?
And what that also says to me is, I'm human. Like space, grace. Like, you're a human. You're not born to be perfect.
No.
And I think, you know, especially for me, life has to look a certain way.
You're saying for you?
Yeah, for me, life had to look a certain way.
Okay.
So like, I thought I'd had all of these things, you know, and it had to look a certain way. And what we forget is that life has to feel a certain way. Now, if I'd trusted my feelings, and I know there's no way my son's dad probably listened to this podcast, I probably wouldn't have had a baby with him, because I knew that, we're not really aligned here. Yeah. But my head was, you're coming up to 30. This is a safe relationship, as in, like, he's a little bit older. I just really hope he doesn't listen to this. He's a little bit older. You know, he's not going to be, I didn't think he was going to be unfaithful to me. This kind of what I thought was safety, you know, this is like a physical safety, but there was no emotional safety there. If I look back, I can't say it didn't feel right, but there were things, if I'd have trusted my gut, and obviously you never regret anything, right, because you've got children and stuff. But I was so caught up on what life should look like, especially at 30. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm 30. I've only got 10 years left. Do you know what I mean?
I know. And there's a beautiful paper by Simone de Beauvoir who said, we never understand our age we are until we're 10 years older. Like the advice you'd give your 10-year younger self.
I'm going to ask you that at the end.
Oh.
There's something here on page 250 I wanted to ask.
Okay.
Do you remember what's on page 250?
No. I wish I did.
This book's been following us around on holiday and everything.
I love that.
My
You're
boyfriend's
so
like,
sweet.
what's... Because I'm reading some of the quotes. Where was it? I wrote it here. So I loved this. Okay. And it was going back. I don't know if you ever saw what I put on. It's one of the first things I went viral with, actually. Is that I was like, I'm dying. Everyone's like, what? And I was like, no, I'm dying. When we come into this world, we feel we have these infinite numbers of days and we count up to our birthdays and the accolades and the milestones. But in truth, you know, your days are ticking down. Yeah. Obviously, it caused a bit of a stir, but that perspective, and you really resonated here when you said about us all having one life. This may come across, but life is clear. We get one chance at this thing called life. Yeah. Let's strive to make it one that resonates deeply. And if that means honouring our needs, being on our own side a little more, and cultivating more inner ease with ourselves and with our interactions with those around us, then it's imperative we encourage everyone to choose themselves a little bit more. This isn't about selfishness, despite the misconceptions often associated with self-care and self-love. It is about recognising our own intrinsic worth and acknowledging that our needs are just as significant as those of others. Everyone holds value and everyone matters. Loved it.
Oh,
so my question to you was, how do you teach your children to choose you? Choose them.
Choose themselves. Well, I suppose I would say it's two-pronged. They had, I say the advantage, but I don't mean that in an arrogant way.
Truthful.
They saw their own mum go through a journey of choosing herself. So pre-training as a therapist, I didn't choose myself. So
and what did that look like in comparison to now?
Worrying about what other people would think of me, not making decisions for my own life based on what they might think of those decisions. And when you train as a therapist, psychotherapy, you have to have weekly therapy yourself. So I had over 100 hours personal therapy, and that mirror was really held up. And I remember my therapist saying, why can't you do that, what you want to do? I said, but it might upset people. We all have, of course, an accountability and a care for other people, but not at the detriment of you living a life that you want to live. So my children really witnessed me go on that growth journey of confidence, actually, where I actually started to make my own decisions. My life has changed beyond recognition in the last 5 years. And again, I don't want to sound arrogant or privileged here. I am the happiest I've ever been at 50 than I've ever been at any other stage in my life. Makes me tearful.
It's going to make me tearful.
Because I
feel
don't
that.
share my personal story. But I've got there. And I'm still getting there.
Yeah.
And as I said to you before we went live, Nietzsche has a beautiful quote, which is, we are always in the process of becoming. So my children have learnt to choose themselves from witnessing me choose myself. But also, I've encouraged them to choose themselves. So I've talked to them so much about mental health, being allowed to feel. I remember saying to my son when I first started training, come on, he was 16, we're going to have a mental health chat. And he was just like, oh my word, no. I mean, I'd never even said those words to him before. And he was literally squirming, itching. And then about 45 minutes in, he went, oh, I feel so much better for that. And I was like, oh, wow. And then they progressed on to mental health walks. And my son and I go on walks all of the time. He's now nearly 21.
It's just like a disguise, though, isn't it?
And it's just, do you know what? It's that conversation. I'd never have had those conversations with him if I hadn't have trained as a therapist. And now he normalises mental health.
And do you remember the first time where you chose when you're like, I'm going to say no to this, and I've never done this in my whole life?
It was more I asked for help. I remember asking for help, and I never asked for help. I would literally, got to do it myself, you know, literally that. And then being met with, of course, what do you need me to do? And I was like, oh,
There's
wow.
this support system somewhere.
I remember turning up to my therapist with first session, and she took my history, and I said, but I'm really self-sufficient. I don't need anyone. And she went, oh, you do. You do need people. And it was in that moment I thought, oh, I've just built these walls around me. I remember friends saying to me, Helen, you put up walls when you're struggling and no one can get in. And I was like, it's literally a protective wall. And one of my friends got very upset with me, and I remember being quite hurt about it at the time. She was absolutely right. The brick wall went up. I wouldn't show emotion. I wouldn't show vulnerability, literally like, don't touch me. But allowing myself to take down that wall, just be human.
And again, I think it goes back to what we're saying is connection and environment and community.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things I learned is not everyone's for you either.
No.
Not everyone's going to like you. So when I started this podcast thing, I was like, everyone's got to love me because I don't love myself. And now I'm like, no one's going to there's like James will tell us 3 million podcasts or whatever in the world. Not everyone's going to love the same thing. And that's okay.
It is okay. And as my friend said, my psychotherapist, my wonderful peer, as he says, you're sharing the words and the story and the podcast you want to share. That should be enough.
And if you're sharing anything else, it's not your truth.
And it doesn't align, and you'll see the disconnect in it.
Did you ever think your journey in therapy would lead you here with this like amazing platform and the ability to change so many people's lives?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, when I first started training as a therapist, I think I was on about, 25,000. So in 5 years.
But it's like that, you've got the trajectory to change, so you've got the ability to change so many people's lives through your work.
I hope so. I hope I'm changing the right people. The right people will find
Or even just the gentle
connection.
reminders and the messages that will land with people and resonate with them. And
yeah, and I think for some people, and this is the message that's come back to me time and time again through my platform, is not being rushed. Our nervous system can't be rushed into a sense of safety. It needs to be held. It needs compassion. It needs gentleness. That's what it needs to really shift and change.
And I think we think change happens overnight. There's this disparity between our time and real time.
Yeah.
You know, like I said to you, I've read the podcast, I've done the retreats, I've done this, I've read the book. Why am I not there yet? And it's sometimes not until you look back.
I was just going to say to you,
it's the tiny decisions, isn't it? It's like, when I used to binge eat, or like I said to you, and I've got to be really vulnerable here, not looking at myself in the mirror. It's like, no, I am. You're enough. It's those small things that you're like, wow. And we get so caught up, I think, everyone sets these inherently large goals. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to be a vegan. I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to do all of this stuff.
Yes.
And then we do something wrong, like we cheat or we don't make that run. And I always feel like we get this bit of like a fuck it bucket. And in it goes, I knew I was never good enough. I knew I was never going to do the marathon. I knew I was never. And in this bucket, we accumulate all this, beliefs that we were never good enough. And we just keep feeding it instead of saying, you showed up for the run the last 10 times in a week. Why have you got to run a marathon, Brogan? Can't you just do a 5K? Why do we put it there?
Yeah, you put such a huge expectation on yourself. But what you're saying there is about the build-up, the slow, the drip by drip, is turning, and we talked about it in the podcast with the neuroscientist, we're turning that dirt track on the neural pathway in our brain, and if we keep just adding to it, those small runs, that dirt track will eventually turn into a highway.
Yeah. What a beautiful analogy.
It works. It makes sense, doesn't it? But if we're constantly thinking we should already be the concrete highway, how do we get there?
That's the thing. And I know it's so cliche, but it's like, houses are built by bricks. And what have you got to do? You've got to lay them every single day. And I think we feel that. I've got to stop saying we. I felt that.
Yeah, that's a big thing in therapy. You own your words, own your feelings.
I'm owning my feelings, but I feel like I'm speaking for a lot of people, is that we think, things that shifts that should just to happen and change over time, and we should be these things.
Yeah.
And everything just takes time. And I think as well with social media and the worlds we live in, everything's so instant. And we're like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean I'm not there yet? And one of my biggest realizations was that, we never really get there. Like you say, we're striving.
Yeah. And it's about that acknowledgement that we're never there, we're getting there. But I always say to people, look at the things that bring ease to your nervous system and repeat them, because that will just keep moving you forward. It will just keep moving you forward.
That's amazing advice.
It's the simpler, smaller steps, the letting go, but also, as you've done so much work yourself, understanding where those voices are coming from, where that criticism's coming from, and just coming back to the key part of it all, acceptance of self. Just turning up as this is who I am. And if anyone else had lived your life with your lived experiences, the people around you, they would have done exactly the same thing as you.
So what's next
For
you? Is there going to be another? What's? I mean, you've accomplished so much in 5 years. What's next for you?
That's a beautiful question I have not even thought about.
Have you not?
No.
You've got the book. You've got an amazing platform. You're helping so many people. This, to me, is like a Bible. So anyone who hasn't got Choose You, go and get Choose You. Because I feel like Helen's in the room with you. And all of the things that can often feel so far away from people that aren't able to afford therapy or, I think, like I said at the beginning, I feel there's a lot of weight and shame around it in certain families if you've not been exposed to it. And this is like part of the journey that you can start at with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think this book brought down my nervous system, but it's just going back to it's okay and you and remembering you are an individual.
Yeah, and I loved you brought that passage up from page 250.
Yeah, 250. If you've not watched it, just highlight that. Brilliant.
Because it was about you matter too. And I think coming back to your question, I was just thinking about it while you carried on talking. I think the reason why I don't have what I want to do next is I'm so sorry to say this, so content where I am. So I just want to keep cultivating that. And as I said to you, do what keeps bringing ease to your nervous system. It's working at the moment. It's building resources, resilience, so that I can have enough energy for, I don't know what life's going to throw at me tomorrow. So
what do you still, as a therapist, struggle with at the minute?
Wow. God, you come in quick and fast.
Yeah. Because you're
struggle with?
human too. Like I told you about a relationship with my therapist. I'm like, oh my God, she's a demigod. They're amazing. They've just got this capacity to see the best in everything, dissemble everything in the right way, and they've got their stuff figured out. But you're human too, and there must be stuff you still struggle with.
That's a lovely question, and thank you for asking, because therapists are still human, and I would say self-belief. That's been easier to say because my husband often says to me, Helen, your self-belief is down there. You are good enough. So that's still creeping in.
That's such a beautiful thing to share, because I think it's so important to remember these people like you, who we think are these pinnacle of understanding and knowledge, and everyone has got this self-doubt or, inner critic, and it's such a beautiful thing to share, because I almost feel that everyone's got their stuff everyone's got their stuff figured out.
Yes.
And remember, we're all human, and we all need space and grace to feel certain things.
Yes. And the self-belief is less now, but knowing and being able to catch myself and understand that it comes from societal pressure.
Programming.
Yeah. And actually, when I actually give it meaning and understand where mine's coming from, it's stupid. I'm human.
Yeah.
We're not meant to be superhuman.
No.
So, yeah, self-belief's a big one, but you're right. I think so many people struggle with it.
I don't think there's anyone who's probably not gone on in their life and has ever gone on in their life and never had a negative thought about their self-belief, really, is there?
No, I'd love to meet them.
They're probably in a prison somewhere, like some serial killer who's actually got like a brain problem. I knew I could do it.
No, I was thinking more down the line. They must have had amazing parents.
Yeah.
I do think about those parents that are... I remember being on holiday once and it's funny how certain people you remember in your mind. It was a fleeting, passing moment. But they were two youngish parents, and my children were a lot older, and they were with their child. And the way they were with this child was they were so freeing with them and calm and relaxed. And I thought, I'd love to see what that child's going to be like when they're older. Because the parenting was so calm and in control, but very, very calm.
Safe.
The aura was just that you could sense the aura of it. I need some of that. That would be wonderful. Yeah. That aura.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your time today. I'm really pleased we made it happen. There's something in that bag for you. We can turn it off now. There's something in the bag for you.
Can I say thank you?
Yeah, you can say thank you.
So much for
having me.
Don't
be silly.
You're such a warm, compassionate host. You make me feel very safe to be in the room.
I have had that feedback. I'm pleased.
Beautiful. No, I wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you. Because that's my mission. I just want to have this space where it's non-judgment, just two people connected and driven by my curiosity, by people that I think are semi-getting somewhere.
Yeah.
And that could be a 21-year-old male escort, and it could be you. So,
your
and it could be Mo.
Your diversity.
Yeah. Because I'm just curious. But thank you so much for your time today.